The flash of a camera went off in Elena's peripheral vision, and her stomach dropped with the sickening realization that someone was photographing her without permission. She was standing in the lobby of the Bennett Hotel, one of Chicago's most prestigious establishments, waiting for her interview with the head of housekeeping. The marble floors gleamed under crystal chandeliers, and elegant guests moved through the space with practiced ease. Elena had worn her best navy dress, the one she'd bought for her college graduation 3 years ago, and had spent an hour making sure her dark hair fell in soft waves past her shoulders. This job meant everything to her. After her mother's cancer diagnosis and the mounting medical bills, Elena had left her position at a small boutique hotel in Iowa to move back home. She needed this job desperately, and the Bennett Hotel paid well enough that she could help with her mother's treatments. The camera flashed again, closer this time, and Elena turned to see a man in expensive casual wear holding up his phone, clearly taking photos of her. Her heart raced with a mixture of fear and anger. She stepped backward, trying to move away from him, but he followed, snapping more pictures. "Excuse me, please stop," she said, her voice firm despite the trembling in her hands. The man ignored her completely, adjusting his angle to get a better shot. Elena felt exposed and vulnerable, aware that other people in the lobby were beginning to notice the situation. Heat crept up her neck as embarrassment flooded through her. Before she could say anything else, a tall figure moved swiftly between her and the photographer, completely blocking the camera's line of sight. The man was broad-shouldered and wore an impeccably tailored charcoal suit that spoke of wealth and authority. He positioned himself so that his body formed a barrier, and Elena found herself staring at the back of his jacket, noting the way the fabric stretched across his shoulders. "That's enough," the man said, his voice low and commanding. "Delete those photos." "I'm just taking pictures in a public space," the photographer protested. "I have every right to. This is private property and you're harassing one of our guests." "Delete the photos now, or I'll have security escort you out and press charges." There was something in the man's tone that brooked no argument. Elena watched as the photographer's defiance crumbled. He fumbled with his phone, and the tall man watched until he was satisfied the photos had been removed. "Now leave. You're banned from this property." The photographer muttered something under his breath, but scurried away toward the exit. The moment he was gone, the man turned to face Elena, and she got her first clear look at him. He was striking in a way that made her breath catch. Dark hair, styled back from a face with strong features and deep brown eyes that held both intensity and concern. He appeared to be in his early 30s, and there was something about him that commanded attention, a natural authority that had nothing to do with the expensive suit he wore. "Are you all right?" he asked, his voice gentler now but still carrying that underlying strength. "I think so," Elena said, though her hands were still shaking slightly. "Thank you. I don't know what he wanted or why he was. You don't need to explain. Come with me. Let's get you out of this lobby." He placed a hand lightly on her lower back, guiding her toward a quieter corridor away from the main entrance. His touch was respectful but protective, and Elena found herself grateful for the steadiness he provided. They walked past a bank of elevators to a small alcove with plush seating overlooking the city through floor-to-ceiling windows. "Sit down for a moment," he said, and Elena sank into one of the chairs, suddenly aware of how shaken she actually was. He sat across from her, leaning forward with his elbows on his knees. "I'm Kieran Bennett. I own this hotel." Elena's eyes widened. She'd been so focused on preparing for her interview that she hadn't thought much about the Bennett family that owned the hotel chain. Now she realized she was sitting across from the CEO himself. "Elena Baker," she managed. "I'm here for an interview. housekeeping management position. Something flickered in Kieran's expression, surprise perhaps, followed by what might have been admiration. You came for a job interview and instead you got harassed in my lobby. I'm deeply sorry. That should never have happened. It's not your fault. You helped me. I'm grateful for that. Still, you're here as a potential employee and you deserved better. He paused, studying her with those intense brown eyes. Are you sure you're all right to proceed with the interview? We can reschedule if you need time to recover. Elena straightened in her chair. No, I'm fine. I need this job. I want this job. I'm qualified and I'm ready for the interview. A small smile tugged at the corner of Kieran's mouth. I can see that. Wait here for just a moment. He stood and walked a few paces away, pulling out his phone and making a quick call. Elena watched him, noting the confident way he carried himself, the way he seemed to own every space he occupied. When he returned, he sat down again. I've asked the head of housekeeping to meet us here instead of her office. Given what just happened, I thought you might prefer a quieter setting. You didn't have to do that. I wanted to. His gaze held hers for a moment longer than necessary, and Elena felt something shift in the air between them. It was the smallest spark, barely noticeable, but it was there. The interview with Margaret Chen, the housekeeping director, went better than Elena had hoped. Margaret was a no-nonsense woman in her 50s with kind eyes and a direct manner. She asked detailed questions about Elena's previous experience, her approach to team management, and her philosophy on maintaining high standards. Elena answered honestly, drawing on her 3 years at the smaller hotel and her natural aptitude for organization and leadership. Kieran had excused himself after the first few minutes, but Elena caught herself glancing toward the corridor where he disappeared, wondering if she'd see him again. 3 days later, Elena received a call offering her the position. She accepted immediately, relief flooding through her so powerfully that she had to sit down. That evening, she drove to the hospital where her mother was receiving treatment and shared the good news. The Bennett Hotel, her mother Grace said with a tired but genuine smile. That's wonderful, sweetheart. I'm so proud of you. The pay is good, Mom, really good. It's going to help with everything. Grace reached for Elena's hand. You shouldn't have had to come back home and take care of me. You had your own life starting in Iowa. I want to be here. There's nowhere else I'd rather be. It was the truth. Elena had always been close to her mother, especially after her father had passed away from a heart attack when Elena was 16. They'd built a life together, just the two of them, supporting each other through everything. When the cancer diagnosis came 6 months ago, there had been no question in Elena's mind about what she needed to do. Elena started at the Bennett Hotel the following Monday. The work was demanding but rewarding. She oversaw a team of 20 housekeepers across the hotel's 15 floors, coordinating schedules, ensuring quality standards, and troubleshooting problems as they arose. The hotel catered to high-end clientele, which meant expectations were elevated, but Elena thrived under the pressure. She didn't see Kieran again for nearly 2 weeks. The hotel was massive, and as CEO, he likely spent most of his time in the executive offices or at off-site meetings. Elena told herself she wasn't looking for him, but she couldn't deny the small disappointment she felt each day when their paths didn't cross. On a Thursday afternoon, Elena was conducting a spot inspection on the 12th floor when she heard raised voices coming from one of the suites. She recognized the sound of distress immediately and hurried toward it, her master key already in hand. Inside the suite, she found an elderly guest, Mrs. Peterson, looking frantic. "My medication," the woman was saying to one of the housekeepers. "I can't find my heart medication." "I know I left it on the nightstand, but it's not there." Elena immediately took charge. Mrs. Peterson, please sit down. We're going to find your medication. Can you describe what it looks like? While the elderly woman described the pill bottle, Elena carefully searched the suite with the housekeeper. They checked every surface, looked under furniture, and even went through the trash. Finally, Elena found the small orange bottle that had somehow rolled behind the nightstand and fallen into a gap between the furniture and the wall. "Here it is," Elena said, handing it to Mrs. Peterson with a reassuring smile. "You're all set." The relief on the woman's face was profound. "Thank you so much. I was so worried. Of course, if you need anything else, please don't hesitate to call the front desk and ask for me. Elena Baker." As Elena left the suite, she nearly collided with someone in the hallway. Strong hands steadied her shoulders and she looked up to find Kieran standing there, his expression surprised but pleased. "Elena, I heard there was a situation on this floor. All resolved. Mrs. Peterson couldn't find her medication, but we located it. Good work." He released her shoulders but didn't step back immediately. They stood close together in the hallway, and Elena was acutely aware of his presence, the subtle scent of his cologne, the way his eyes seemed to see right through her professional demeanor to something deeper. "How are you settling in?" he asked. "Really well. Everyone's been welcoming and I love the work. I'm glad to hear it. And no more unwanted photographers, I hope," Elena smiled. "No, thankfully, though I've been meaning to thank you properly for what you did that day. You didn't have to step in like that." "Yes, I did. No one should feel unsafe in my hotel, especially not you." The last two words hung in the air between them, weighted with meaning Elena wasn't quite ready to examine. Before she could respond, Kieran's phone buzzed and he glanced at it with obvious reluctance. "I have a meeting." "But Elena, I'd like to talk with you more. Would you have dinner with me tomorrow evening? Not as your boss, just as someone who would like to get to know you better." Elena's heart skipped a beat. This was unexpected, but she found herself wanting to say yes more than was probably wise. "I'd like that. 7 o'clock. I'll pick you up from the employee entrance." "Okay." Kieran's smile transformed his entire face, making him seem younger and more approachable. "I'll see you tomorrow then." Elena floated through the rest of her shift in a daze. She kept replaying the conversation in her mind, the way Kieran had looked at her, the warmth in his voice when he'd asked her to dinner. It felt surreal. She was a housekeeping manager, and he was the CEO of a hotel empire. This couldn't be real. But the next evening, when she emerged from the employee entrance at 7 o'clock sharp, Kieran was waiting beside a sleek black car that probably cost more than Elena would make in 5 years. He opened the door for her himself, and as she slid into the leather seat, Elena wondered if she was dreaming. He took her to a small Italian restaurant tucked away in a quiet neighborhood, the kind of place that didn't advertise because it didn't need to. The owner greeted Kieran by name and showed them to a private table in the back. "I hope Italian is all right," Kieran said as they settled into their seats. "This place has been family-owned for 40 years. Best pasta in the city." "It's perfect," Elena said honestly. The restaurant had a warm, intimate atmosphere that put her at ease despite her nerves. Over plates of homemade ravioli and glasses of red wine, they talked. Kieran asked about her background, and Elena found herself opening up about growing up in a small town outside Chicago, about losing her father young, about her mother's illness. "I'm sorry about your mother," Kieran said, his expression genuinely sympathetic. "Cancer is brutal. My grandmother went through it when I was in college. It's hard watching someone you love fight that battle." "It is," Elena agreed. "But she's strong. Stronger than I am, honestly. She keeps telling me not to worry, to live my own life, but I can't just pretend everything's fine." "You're taking care of her because you love her. That's not weakness. That's strength." Elena met his eyes across the table, and something in his understanding gaze made her chest tighten. "Thank you for saying that." As the evening progressed, Elena learned about Kieran's life too. He'd grown up in privilege, the only son of the Bennett family that had built their hotel empire over 3 generations. But privilege, he explained, came with expectations and pressure. "I took over as CEO when I was 28, Kieran said. "My father had a stroke, and suddenly, I was running a company with properties in 12 cities and over 3,000 employees. I had an MBA, but nothing really prepares you for that level of responsibility. That must have been overwhelming." "It was. Still is sometimes. People think being wealthy means everything's easy, but the truth is, I work 70-hour weeks. I'm responsible for all those employees and their families, for maintaining standards, for growing the business. There's no room for error." "But you love it," Elena observed. "I can hear it in your voice." Kieran looked at her with something close to wonder. "You're right. I do love it. Most people don't see that. They just see the money and the power. I see someone who stepped in to protect a stranger without a second thought. Someone who makes sure an elderly guest's medication is found. Those things tell me more about you than your title does." The look Kieran gave her then was so intense that Elena felt heat rise to her cheeks. "You're remarkable, Elena Baker. I knew it the moment I saw you." They stayed at the restaurant until it closed, talking about everything and nothing. Kieran told her about his love of architecture and how he'd personally overseen the restoration of the Bennett Hotel's historic facade. Elena shared her dream of one day opening a bed and breakfast, something small and personal where she could create a welcoming space for travelers. "You would be amazing at that," Kieran said. "You have that quality, that warmth that makes people feel safe and cared for." When he drove her home to her modest apartment in a neighborhood that was clearly worlds away from where he lived, Kieran walked her to the door. "Thank you for tonight," Elena said, not wanting the evening to end. "I had a wonderful time." "So did I. Elena, I'd like to see you again. Not at work." "Like this?" "I'd like that too." Kieran reached out and tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, his touch gentle. "I'll call you tomorrow." He waited until she was safely inside before returning to his car. Elena leaned against her closed door, her heart racing. She felt like Cinderella, except the prince had found her before midnight, and the magic showed no signs of fading over the next few weeks. Elena and Kieran saw each other whenever their schedules allowed. He took her to art galleries and concerts, to quiet cafes and beautiful parks. They talked for hours, discovering shared interests and values that transcended their different backgrounds. Kieran was thoughtful and attentive, always making sure Elena felt comfortable, never pushing for more than she was ready to give. At work, they maintained professional boundaries. Kieran didn't give Elena special treatment, and she didn't expect any. But there were moments when their eyes would meet across the lobby or in a hallway, and Elena would feel that spark, that connection that seemed to grow stronger with each passing day. One evening, about a month after their first date, Kieran picked Elena up and drove not to a restaurant or entertainment venue, but to a residential building with a doorman and obvious luxury written into every detail. "This is where I live," he said. "I wanted to cook for you tonight." "If that's all right." Elena felt nervous butterflies take flight in her stomach. Going to his home felt like crossing a threshold, but she trusted Kieran. "I'd love that." His penthouse was stunning, with floor-to-ceiling windows offering a panoramic view of Chicago's skyline. The space was decorated with understated elegance, modern furniture mixed with carefully chosen art pieces. But what struck Elena most was how lived in it felt. There were books stacked on the coffee table, a throw blanket draped over the back of the couch, framed photos of what must be his family on the shelves. Make yourself comfortable, Kieran said, shrugging off his suit jacket. I'm going to change into something more casual, and then I'll start dinner. He emerged a few minutes later in jeans and a navy Henley that made him look approachable and devastatingly handsome. Elena had also dressed casually for the evening in jeans and a soft sweater, and she was glad now that she had. Kieran cooked with easy confidence, preparing salmon with roasted vegetables, while Elena sat at the kitchen island and kept him company. He poured her wine and told her stories about learning to cook from his grandmother, the same one who had battled cancer. She insisted every Bennett should know how to fend for themselves in the kitchen, he said with a fond smile. She said relying entirely on staff or restaurants was a sign of weakness. She sounds like she was an incredible woman. She was. She would have liked you. Kieran paused in his chopping to look at Elena. Actually, she would have loved you. After dinner, they moved to the couch, sitting close together while the city lights sparkled below them. Kieran had put on soft music, and the atmosphere felt intimate and charged with possibility. Elena, Kieran said, turning to face her. These past few weeks with you have been the best I can remember in years. You make me feel like myself, not just the CEO or the Bennett heir, just Kieran. You do the same for me, Elena said softly. When I'm with you, I forget about all the stress and worry. I just feel happy. Kieran reached out and cupped her face in his hand. I'm falling for you. I need you to know that. Elena's breath caught. I'm falling for you too. He kissed her then, slow and deep, and Elena felt like she was dissolving into him. His arms wrapped around her, pulling her close, and she went willingly, losing herself in the sensation of being wanted and cherished. They kissed until Elena was dizzy with it, until the world narrowed to just the two of them and this moment. When they finally pulled apart, Kieran rested his forehead against hers. Stay with me tonight, just to sleep. I want to wake up with you here. Elena nodded, unable to form words. They moved to his bedroom, and Kieran gave her one of his shirts to sleep in. They lay together under the covers, Elena tucked against Kieran's chest, his arms around her. It felt perfect and right, like coming home. I'm happy, Elena whispered into the darkness. So am I, Kieran replied, pressing a kiss to her hair. So am I. The next morning, Elena woke to sunlight streaming through the windows and the smell of coffee brewing. Kieran was already up, and she found him in the kitchen wearing pajama pants and nothing else, his muscular back on full display as he made breakfast. Good morning, he said when he noticed her, his smile warm and intimate. How do you like your eggs, however you're making them? They ate breakfast together, and Kieran drove Elena home so she could change before work. At her door, he kissed her goodbye like it was the most natural thing in the world. Dinner tomorrow? He asked. Yes, Elena agreed, already counting the hours until she'd see him again. Life fell into a pattern over the following weeks. Elena worked hard at the hotel, earning respect from her team and positive feedback from guests. Her evenings were often spent with Kieran, whether at restaurants at his place, or sometimes at her modest apartment, which he never treated as lesser despite the obvious differences. Elena's mother's treatment was progressing well, and the financial pressure was easing thanks to Elena's new salary. Grace was thrilled about the relationship, though she worried about the difference in their circumstances. Just be careful, Grace said one day when Elena visited the hospital. He comes from a very different world. I don't want to see you hurt. He's not like that, Mom. He doesn't care about money or status. He cares about me. I hope so, sweetheart. You deserve someone who loves you exactly as you are. Elena believed Kieran did love her. He showed it in countless ways in how he listened when she talked, how he remembered small details about her preferences, how he supported her career ambitions without trying to overshadow them with his own resources. He made her feel valued and seen in a way she'd never experienced before. But there were challenges too. The Bennett family was prominent in Chicago's social circles, and Kieran's mother, Victoria, had expectations about who her son should date. When Kieran finally told his mother about Elena, the response was less than enthusiastic. "She's a housekeeping manager." Victoria said during a tense family dinner that Elena attended. The older woman was elegant and intimidating, with perfectly styled silver hair and designer everything. "Kieran, surely you understand the complications." "There are no complications, Mother," Kieran said firmly. "Elena is the woman I love, and I expect you to treat her with respect." Elena felt her face flush with embarrassment, but she held her head high. She wouldn't apologize for who she was or where she came from. "It's lovely to meet you, Mrs. Bennett," Elena said with quiet dignity. "Kieran speaks very highly of his family." Victoria studied her for a long moment, and Elena met her gaze steadily. Finally, the older woman's expression softened slightly. "Please call me Victoria. If you're important to my son, then I should get to know you better." It wasn't warm, but it was a start. As the dinner progressed, Elena held her own in conversations about art, culture, and current events. She didn't pretend to be someone she wasn't, but she also demonstrated that she was intelligent and capable. By the end of the evening, Victoria was treating her with considerably more warmth. "You handled that perfectly," Kieran said later as they drove back to his place. "My mother can be difficult, but she respects strength. You showed her who you are, and she couldn't help but be impressed." "I was terrified," Elena admitted. "You didn't show it." Kieran reached over and took her hand. "I'm proud of you, and I'm sorry you had to deal with that scrutiny in the first place. It's not fair." "It comes with the territory of dating you," Elena said with a small smile, "and you're worth it." As fall turned to winter, Elena and Kieran's relationship deepened. They were inseparable on their days off, exploring the city together or staying in to watch movies and cook dinner. Kieran met Elena's mother and was gentle and kind with her, asking about her treatment and making her laugh with stories from the hotel. "He's a good man," Grace told Elena after one visit. "I was wrong to worry. He loves you genuinely." Elena knew her mother was right. Kieran showed his love not just in grand gestures but in small daily acts. He brought her coffee when she had early shifts, sent flowers to her office just because, and listened patiently when she needed to vent about difficult days at work. In return, Elena brought lightness into Kieran's structured, high-pressure life. She made him laugh, encouraged him to take breaks, and reminded him that there was more to life than business. They balanced each other perfectly. 3 months into their relationship, on a snowy December evening, Kieran took Elena ice skating at Millennium Park. The rink was lit with twinkling lights, and the atmosphere was magical. They skated hand in hand, laughing when one or the other wobbled, and Elena felt overwhelmingly happy. After skating, Kieran suggested hot chocolate at a nearby cafe. But when they arrived, Elena realized he'd arranged for the entire place to be empty except for them. A fire crackled in the fireplace, and soft music played in the background. "Kieran, what's going on?" Elena asked, though her heart was already beginning to race. Kieran took both her hands in his expression serious and tender. "Elena, these past few months with you have been the happiest of my life. You've changed everything for me. You make me want to be better, to build a life that's about more than just work and responsibility." "Kieran," Elena whispered, tears already forming in her eyes. "I love you. I'm completely, irreversibly in love with you. And I know it hasn't been long, but when you know, you know." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. "Elena Baker, will you marry me?" He opened the box to reveal a stunning diamond ring, elegant and timeless. Elena's hands flew to her mouth as tears spilled down her cheeks. "Yes," she said, her voice breaking with emotion. "Yes, of course I'll marry you." Kieran slipped the ring onto her finger and then pulled her into his arms, kissing her while she laughed and cried at the same time. It felt like a fairy tale, except it was real, more real than anything Elena had ever experienced. "I can't believe this is happening," she said against his chest. "Believe it," Kieran murmured. "You're going to be my wife. I'm going to spend the rest of my life making you happy." They stayed at the cafe for hours, drinking hot chocolate and making plans. Kieran wanted to get married soon, within a few months if possible. He didn't want to wait, and neither did Elena. They talked about where they would live, his penthouse, which she loved, and about starting a family someday. "I want everything with you," Kieran said, holding her close. "Children, adventure, quiet mornings, and exciting nights. Everything." "I want that too," Elena said. "I want to build a life with you." The engagement made news in Chicago's social circles. The Bennett heir marrying a housekeeping manager was unconventional enough to cause gossip, but Kieran handled it with grace and firmness. He made it clear to everyone, including the media, that Elena was not to be harassed or disrespected. She was his fiancée, and anyone who had a problem with that could take it up with him. Elena continued working at the hotel, though she and Kieran were now open about their relationship. The staff treated her no differently, which she appreciated. She'd earned her position through hard work, and she wanted to be respected for that, not for who she was marrying. Planning the wedding was a joint effort. Victoria had opinions, of course, but Kieran made sure Elena's voice was heard on every decision. They chose a beautiful historic venue, a restored mansion with gardens, for a spring wedding. The guest list was a mix of Kieran's business associates and society friends, along with Elena's family and close friends. Grace's health continued to improve, and her doctors were cautiously optimistic. She would be able to attend the wedding, which meant everything to Elena. Having her mother there to see her get married was a dream Elena had feared might not come true. As winter melted into spring, Elena marveled at how much her life had changed in less than a year. She'd gone from struggling to make ends meet and care for her sick mother to being engaged to a man she loved deeply, and who loved her just as much. It didn't feel real sometimes, but Kieran was always there to remind her that it was. "You saved me," he told her one night as they lay in bed together. "Before you, I was just going through the motions. Work, obligations, expectations. But you showed me what it means to actually live, to feel joy and love and hope." "You saved me too," Elena said, "in more ways than you know." Their wedding day in April was perfect. The weather cooperated with clear skies and warm sunshine. Elena wore a simple but elegant gown that made her feel like a princess, and when she walked down the aisle on shaky legs, all she could see was Kieran waiting for her at the altar, his eyes bright with emotion. They exchanged vows they'd written themselves. Kieran promised to love Elena through every season, to support her dreams, and to build a life of partnership and respect. Elena promised to stand beside him, to bring him joy, and to love him with everything she had. When they were pronounced husband and wife and Kieran kissed her, Elena felt like she was floating. The reception was a blur of dancing, laughter, and happiness. Grace looked beautiful and healthy, and Victoria even gave a touching speech about how Elena had brought light into her son's life. The best moment, though, was late in the evening when Elena and Kieran snuck away from the party for a few minutes alone. They stood in the garden under the stars, his arms around her waist, her head on his shoulder. "We did it," Elena said. "We're married." "Best decision I ever made," Kieran replied. "You're mine now, Mrs. Bennett." "And you're mine, Mr. Bennett." They honeymooned in Italy, spending 2 weeks exploring Rome, Florence, and the Amalfi Coast. It was magical and romantic, a perfect start to their married life. They ate incredible food, saw breathtaking art and architecture, and spent lazy afternoons in bed at beautiful hotels. "I want to bring you back here every year," Kieran said as they watched the sunset over the Mediterranean from their hotel balcony in Positano. "Make it our tradition." "I love that idea," Elena said, snuggled against him. When they returned to Chicago, they settled into married life with surprising ease. Elena continued working at the hotel, and Kieran supported her career fully. They talked about her dreams of opening a bed and breakfast, and Kieran promised that when she was ready, he would help make it happen. A year after their wedding, Elena discovered she was pregnant. She told Kieran over dinner at home, nervous about his reaction even though she knew he wanted children. "Are you serious?" he asked, his eyes wide. "I took 3 tests, all positive." Kieran stood up so fast his chair nearly toppled over. He swept Elena into his arms, spinning her around while she laughed. "We're going to have a baby. Elena, we're going to be parents. Are you happy?" Happy doesn't begin to cover it. "I'm ecstatic. I'm terrified. I'm everything." He set her down gently and placed his hand on her still flat stomach. "There's a person in there. Our person." The pregnancy progressed smoothly. Elena took maternity leave from the hotel in her 3rd trimester, and Kieran adjusted his schedule to be home more often. They prepared the nursery together, painting it a soft yellow and filling it with carefully chosen furniture and toys. Grace's cancer remained in remission, and she was thrilled about becoming a grandmother. She helped Elena prepare for the baby's arrival, sharing wisdom and stories from when Elena was born. "You're going to be an amazing mother," Grace told her daughter. "I'm so proud of the life you've built." In December, exactly 2 years after Kieran had proposed, Elena gave birth to a healthy baby girl. They named her Claire Grace, after Kieran's beloved grandmother and Elena's mother. She had Kieran's dark hair and Elena's eyes, and she was absolutely perfect. Kieran held his daughter with such tenderness that Elena cried watching him. "Hello, Claire," he whispered. "I'm your dad. I've been waiting to meet you." Fatherhood transformed Kieran. He was hands-on from the start, changing diapers, doing nighttime feedings, and constantly marveling at their daughter. He scaled back his work hours to spend more time with his family, delegating more responsibilities to his capable executive team. "My father missed so much of my childhood because of work," Kieran told Elena one night as they watched Claire sleep. "I won't make that mistake. This, right here, this is what matters most." Elena fell even more in love with her husband seeing him as a father. He was patient and gentle, singing to Claire, reading her stories even though she was too young to understand, and generally being completely devoted to his daughter. When Claire was 6 months old, Elena made a decision. She resigned from her position at the hotel to focus on her family and to start planning her bed and breakfast dream. Kieran fully supported her, offering both financial backing and business advice while making sure the project remained hers. They found the perfect property in a charming suburb outside Chicago, a Victorian house with good bones that needed restoration. Elena threw herself into the project, working with architects and designers to create something beautiful and welcoming. The Baker House bed and breakfast opened 2 years later, and it was everything Elena had dreamed of. She ran it with the same attention to detail and warmth she'd brought to her hotel work, and it quickly gained a reputation for exceptional hospitality. Kieran often brought Claire to visit, and guests loved seeing the little girl toddling around the garden or helping her mother arrange flowers in the rooms. The bed and breakfast became a family project, with Kieran handling the business side while Elena focused on the guest experience. They had 2 more children over the next 4 years, a son named Carter and another daughter named Lily. Their home was full of noise and laughter, toys scattered everywhere, and the beautiful chaos of family life. On their 5th wedding anniversary, Kieran arranged for his mother to watch the children so he could take Elena out for a special evening. They returned to the Italian restaurant where they'd had their first date, sitting at the same table in the back. "You remember that first night?" Kieran asked, holding Elena's hand across the table. "I was so nervous. I wanted to impress you so badly." "I remember thinking I must be dreaming," Elena said. "This successful, handsome man wanted to have dinner with me. It seemed impossible. And now here we are. Married, 3 kids, building lives and dreams together." Kieran lifted her hand to his lips. "You know what the crazy thing is? I love you more now than I did on our wedding day. Every day I find new reasons to fall for you all over again." "I feel the same way," Elena said, her eyes shining. "You're my best friend, my partner, the father of my children. You're everything." They talked late into the night, reminiscing about their journey from that first encounter in the hotel lobby when he'd protected her from the photographer, to this moment of deep, abiding love. Their story had started with an act of kindness and protection, and it had blossomed into something beautiful and lasting. Years passed in a happy blur. The children grew, the bed and breakfast thrived, and Kieran and Elena's love only deepened. They had their challenges, of course, disagreements about parenting, stress from balancing careers and family, the normal struggles of any marriage. But they faced everything together, always choosing each other, always putting their family first. Grace lived to see her grandchildren grow, her cancer staying in remission for many years before she eventually passed peacefully in her sleep at age 78. She died knowing her daughter was happy and loved, which Elena took comfort in even through her grief. Victoria became a doting grandmother, her initial reservations about Elena long forgotten. She frequently took the children for weekends and became one of Elena's closest confidantes, the 2 women bonding over their love for Kieran and the family they'd built together. On their 10th anniversary, Kieran surprised Elena with a trip back to Italy, just the 2 of them. They retraced their honeymoon steps, staying in the same hotels and visiting the same places, but now with a decade of marriage and memories behind them. "You have any regrets?" Elena asked one evening as they sat on their hotel balcony overlooking the Amalfi Coast, just as they had on their honeymoon. "Not a single one," Kieran said without hesitation. "Marrying you was the best thing I ever did. Building this life with you has been my greatest achievement, better than any business success. Even though I'm just a housekeeping manager who stumbled into your hotel," Elena teased. "You were never just anything," Kieran said seriously. "From the moment I saw that photographer harassing you, I knew you were special. I knew I had to protect you. I just didn't know yet that I'd end up falling completely in love with you." "I'm glad you stepped in that day," Elena said. "I'm glad you saw me. I'll always see you, Elena, always." They returned home refreshed and reconnected, ready for the next chapter of their lives. Claire was now 9 years old and already showing signs of her father's business acumen and her mother's warmth. Carter was 7 and obsessed with architecture, spending hours building elaborate structures with blocks. Little Lily was 5 and the baby of the family, charming everyone she met. The Bennett family had become a fixture in their community, known for their philanthropy and their genuine kindness. Kieran had expanded the hotel chain while also dedicating significant resources to charitable causes, particularly those supporting cancer research in honor of Grace. Elena's bed and breakfast had won multiple awards and was featured in travel magazines as one of the best in the region. But despite all their success and recognition, what mattered most to both Kieran and Elena was the simple, profound happiness of their family life. Dinner together every night when possible, weekend outings to parks or museums, bedtime stories and tucked-in kisses, lazy Sunday mornings with everyone piled into the master bed. One evening, when the children were finally asleep after much negotiation and one more glass of water, Kieran and Elena collapsed onto their living room couch together. Elena snuggled against her husband's side, and he wrapped his arm around her, pulling her close. "This is my favorite part of the day," Kieran said quietly, "when it's just us and I can hold you like this." "Mine too," Elena agreed, "although I also love the chaos of dinner with 3 kids arguing about vegetables." Kieran laughed. "You're a better person than I am. That chaos stresses me out. You handle boardroom negotiations with millionaire investors, but 3 children at dinner make you nervous. Investors, I understand. Children are unpredictable little humans who can ask impossible questions." Elena smiled, remembering Carter's recent inquiry about where babies come from and Kieran's panicked expression. "You handled that question very well, by the way. I deferred to you, which was the smart move." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, the only sound the ticking of the grandfather clock in the corner. Finally, Elena spoke. "Kieran, I want to tell you something. Anything. Sometimes I still can't believe this is my life. That I get to wake up next to you every day, that we have these beautiful children, that everything turned out so perfectly. It feels like more than I deserve." Kieran sat up and turned to face her, his expression serious. "Elena, listen to me. You deserve every bit of happiness we have. You're the kindest, most genuine person I know. You work hard, you love deeply, and you make everyone around you better. I'm the lucky one. I'm the one who gets to call you my wife, who gets to raise children with you, who gets to grow old beside you." "We're both lucky then," Elena said, her eyes glistening with tears. "We found each other. We did. And I don't take a single day of it for granted." They kissed, soft and sweet, a reaffirmation of all the promises they'd made to each other over the years. When they pulled apart, Elena rested her head on Kieran's shoulder. "Thank you," she whispered. "For what?" "For seeing me that day in the hotel, for protecting me, for loving me." "Thank you for letting me," Kieran replied. "Thank you for taking a chance on me." As they sat together in their living room, surrounded by evidence of their life, family photos on the walls, children's artwork displayed on the fridge, toys neatly organized in baskets, both Kieran and Elena felt an overwhelming sense of contentment. Their love story had started with a moment of crisis, with a man stepping between a woman and danger without thinking. It had grown through shared dinners and long conversations, through the meeting of 2 souls who recognized something essential in each other. It had been tested by differences in background and the scrutiny of others, but it had prevailed because at its core was genuine love and respect. Now, years later, they had built something remarkable together. Not just a marriage, but a partnership. Not just a family, but a legacy of love and kindness. They had taken that initial spark of connection and nurtured it into something strong and lasting. Their children would grow up knowing what real love looked like. They would see their parents choosing each other every day, supporting each other's dreams, and building a life based on mutual respect and genuine affection. They would understand that true love wasn't about grand gestures or fairy tale perfection, but about showing up for each other day after day, choosing partnership over ego, choosing together over apart. As the years continued to unfold, Kieran and Elena faced new challenges and celebrated new joys. They watched their children grow into remarkable young people, Claire developed a passion for social justice and talked about becoming a lawyer. Carter pursued his love of design and spent hours sketching buildings. Lily discovered a talent for music and filled the house with piano melodies. Through it all, Kieran and Elena remained each other's constant. They still went on date nights, still made time for just the two of them. They still laughed together, still supported each other's goals, still found new ways to fall in love. The bed and breakfast continued to thrive, becoming a family affair as the children got older. Claire helped with marketing, Carter contributed design ideas for room renovations, and Lily performed for guests on special occasions. It was exactly what Elena had dreamed of, a business that was also a home, a place where love and hospitality intertwined. Kieran eventually stepped back from day-to-day operations at the hotel chain, transitioning into a chairman role that gave him more flexibility. He wanted to be present for his children's activities and achievements, and he wanted to support Elena's growing business. His priorities had shifted over the years, and he had no regrets about it. On their 15th anniversary, their children surprised them with a party. Claire, now 14 and impressively organized, had coordinated everything. The backyard of their home was decorated with lights and flowers, and friends and family gathered to celebrate the couple. Victoria gave a toast that brought tears to everyone's eyes. 15 years ago, my son married a woman I didn't immediately understand. I was worried about differences in background, about whether they were moving too fast. But Elena proved me wrong in the best possible way. She loved my son not for his name or his money, but for who he is as a person. She made him happier than I'd ever seen him, and together they built this beautiful family and this beautiful life. Elena, you are the daughter I never had. Kieran, you chose brilliantly, to 15 more years and 50 after that. As everyone raised their glasses, Kieran pulled Elena close and kissed her forehead. 50 more years sounds perfect, he murmured. At least 50, Elena agreed. Later that night, after all the guests had left and the children were in bed, Kieran and Elena slow danced in their backyard under the party lights that were still strung up. You remember when I asked you to dance at our wedding? Kieran asked. You told me you weren't very good at it. I remember. You said you didn't care, that you just wanted to hold me. I still feel that way. Every day I just want to hold you. Elena looked up at her husband, this man who had stepped into her life and transformed everything. His face had a few more lines now, evidence of the years and the weight of responsibility he carried. But his eyes still held that same warmth, that same deep love that had captivated her from the beginning. I love you, she said simply. More than words can express. I love you too, Kieran replied. You're my everything, Elena. My wife, my partner, my best friend. You make every day worth living. They danced until the music ended, then stood in each other's arms, looking at their home where their children slept safely, where their life together had unfolded so beautifully. This was happiness, Elena thought. Not perfect, because perfection didn't exist in real life. But real and deep and true. This was love that had been tested and had emerged stronger. This was a partnership built on trust and respect and genuine affection. From that first day in the hotel lobby, when Kieran had blocked the camera with his body and escorted her quietly to safety, Elena had known on some level that this man was special. She just hadn't known then that he would become her husband, the father of her children, the love of her life. But here they were, 15 years later, still choosing each other every single day, still finding joy in each other's company, still building a life together that was full of meaning and purpose and love. Come on, Kieran said finally, taking her hand. Let's go to bed. Tomorrow's a new day, and I want to spend every moment of it with you. Every moment, Elena teased. Even when I'm doing laundry and grocery shopping, especially then. Every moment, Elena, that's the promise." They walked into their house hand in hand, turning off lights as they went, checking on each sleeping child before retiring to their own room. As Elena lay in her husband's arms that night, feeling his steady heartbeat against her back, she felt a profound sense of gratitude. Life had brought her to that hotel lobby on a day she needed a job desperately. Fate had put a photographer there who invaded her privacy. But destiny had placed Kieran Bennett there too, a man who saw someone in distress and acted without hesitation to protect her. From that act of kindness and protection had grown a love story that exceeded Elena's wildest dreams. She had found not just a partner but a soulmate, not just a husband but her other half. Together, they had created a family and a life that was rich with love and joy. As she drifted off to sleep, Elena's last thought was simple but profound. She was home, not just in the physical sense of being in her house, but in the deeper sense of being exactly where she belonged, with the person she was meant to be with. And Kieran, holding his wife close as sleep claimed him too, felt exactly the same way. He had everything he needed right here in his arms. The woman who had walked into his hotel and into his heart, who had agreed to build a life with him, who had given him children and joy and purpose beyond business success. They had started with a moment of crisis and created a lifetime of happiness. They had overcome differences and doubts to find something rare and precious. And they would continue forward together, facing whatever came next with the strength that came from true partnership and genuine love. This was their happily ever after, not an ending but a continuation of the beautiful story they were writing together. A story that had started the day he blocked the camera and led her to safety, and that would continue for all the years to come.